Germany is not as perfect as already displayed in the media. Well, there are very many wonderful things there, of course, and although it has such wonderful social policies compared to many of its European counterparts, there are quite a number of things which are simply uncomfortable, and these are the 5 things I deemed uncomfortable that you might want to know if you are moving to Germany. Matter of fact, many people struggle with these. So, without any further ado, let's roll. Hi guys, my name is Melk. It's been about a year since I last moved to Germany. Well, 1 year is short enough to still be in touch with the glaring discomforts, and also long enough to have the right context. So the first and foremost thing that you might struggle with the moment you land in Germany is the weather. I never really appreciated the weather we had back home in Uganda until I landed in this place called Germany. My God. Germany's weather doesn't just have mood swings, but when it swings with such extremism. When it comes to coldness, guys, German is cold. Eh, eh, eh. I remember when I was landing here, when I was disembarking the plane in Frankfurt and I stepped out of the plane, I was donning my warmest pullover, my hoodie, the warmest I had bought myself in Uganda. And when I stepped out of the plane, I was slapped with such a coldness. All of a sudden, I felt as if I was only putting on a vest. My God, it was so terrible. And of course, later on, when winter came in October, degrees could swing to levels of -10. And just for the sake of context, actually, the normal fridge that we operate at home, the normal fridge, guys, that you put your drinks in, is usually about 7 degrees. But imagine a weather which goes down to -10 degrees. So it was so terrible. In fact, the word cold cannot explain and describe what I mean. You have to experience it by yourself to actually understand what I'm talking about. Of course, then comes the summer. The summer is always referred to as beautiful. It's always called beautiful weather in German. And now I understand why the Germans emphasize calling the weather, which is, having the sun, as beautiful. But despite being bribed with such beautiful and sweet names of, oh, beautiful, beautiful, it unfortunately doesn't last long. Usually winter lasts longer. The other thing is actually it's punctuated with, burning episodes of the sun, which are very harsh to the skin. One requires things like the sunscreen, things I never thought I would ever require in my life, having grown up in Uganda, with the sun all the time. I never thought I would ever require things like the sunscreen. But here in Germany, the sun is quite burning and one requires things like sunscreen. These are things, I never thought I would require. Comparatively speaking, the Savannah sun back home in Uganda, although hot, it is not burning in nature. Here, this thing burns. The second very uncomfortable thing about Germany is the difficulty in getting accommodation or getting where to stay. Luckily, I was blessed and didn't have to go through the hassle of looking for accommodation thanks to my wonderful wife, who at the time was, studying in Germany, and through her we were able to secure this apartment even before we moved here as a couple. For people who have, gone through the process of having to look for accommodation and, looking for where to stay, it is very, very problematic. Usually the searching time for an apartment can take and stretch for even up to 6 months, or some people it actually even takes a year. It is only in German that I go to learn of terms like subrenting. Subrenting is basically where a tenant is like a mini landlord of sorts. They get their space and rent it out to another person. It could be maybe in a place like this one, then you get part of your space and rent it out to another person, or maybe for a short period of time for where you're moving to another part of Germany or moving out of the country. Your place can be taken over by some other person who then pays the rent or something like this. Additionally speaking, the costs are quite on the roof. For a small room in a city like Bonn, you can go for like 300 euros or maybe 400 euros, even some places it goes up to 500 euros. But if you go to bigger cities like Berlin, Hamburg, Cologne, and maybe München, Frankfurt, these places, the rent, it can even double or even triple. The third thing which is quite problematic about Germany is the bureaucracy. And this is something that you might want to pay attention to, or maybe just take note of as you're coming to Germany, that's something bad. Of course, it's more complicated with how big the city is. The bigger the city, the more the complication. But generally speaking, the paperwork, the phone calls, the mailing systems, it just stretches all the way from basic things like, getting a visa to a residence permit, maybe elongating it, or maybe registering your accommodation or living area. That is something you want to take note of as you're coming here. So the fourth thing that really discomforted me about Germany was this whole culture of smoking. I know you might be like, what's the big deal with that? But depending on where you come from, for example, for me, a person who comes from Africa or maybe Uganda in particular, where smoking was and is still looked at as a taboo and like something which is done by social misfits, like the percentage of people who smoke is very scarily high from all age groups. I mean, you find young kids, okay, not necessarily young, but I am still disturbed when you walk into public spaces and you find somebody moving around, emitting smoke like a moving chimney. I mean, this vice is so deep rooted in the culture that, like, when you're on, like, maybe train stations or some other public spaces, there are some places which are designated specifically for people who want to smoke. I didn't like the whole passive smoking thing. You're moving around, people are emitting smoke all over the place. Well, the percentage is quite high, and that's something that, depending on where you're coming from, you might find not very good about German also. The fifth and last thing that you might find problematic in German or when you come here is the delays in their train systems. This is more common with the regional trains which connect, small cities. Occasionally there are these kinds of delays and very many people complain about this. Although for me, honestly speaking, this wasn't an issue for me in the earlier days of my stay in Germany. I could be like, hey, at least it is coming, even if it is late. I was still fascinated with the fact that I am traveling the train in the first place. The train is not just coming, but it is clean, it has Wi-Fi. I was like, my God, it doesn't matter. Why are these people even complaining about the so-called delay in the first place? But as time went on, of course, and these delays happen and you have appointments, they start to be a bother. A month later, I realized I wasn't just being bothered, but I had gained enough courage to even start asking train officials why the trains are coming late in the first place. Yeah, although the reasons are usually indicated why the train is delayed on the app or even on the internet, or it even stays there because of this and this, the train will be a bit late. It's at this point, therefore, that I wouldn't want to delay you any further, but rather thank you for sticking by. And you might want to check out this video here where I talk about the 7 things that you don't want to do if you're new in Germany. If you found any value in the video, please consider doing the sweet things like subscribing, like the video, and of course leave a comment. Until the next one, bye and cheers.